right, thanks for sticking around for the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Rich Walsh in for Bob Pompiani, who has the night off. It's a big week for the Steelers and the Pirates this week, and we have the right people to talk about it all here tonight. Mark Kaboly, the Steelers beat writer from The Athletic, and Chris Adamski, also a Steelers beat writer from the Tribune Review, and we will get to the Steelers in a matter of moments, but I want to start talking about the Pirates, who had a big series against the Phillies. They win the series, but they don't win the final game here today. They couldn't get the sweep. My question to you guys is, did they make a mistake not starting with Skeens, coming back from the All-Star break, picking up the momentum? They had a great game coming back to win that first one, but if you pitch Skeens in this first game, you can also pitch him in the Cardinals series too.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think maybe if you look at it from the beginning, you say you'd like to see him go over the weekend during these 3 games. But how it turned out, you win 2 out of 3. You give him some extra rest. That's the rest that they've probably been seeking for him. You know, when he pitched 12 pitches on Tuesday, he pitched last week. Give him some time off. You win 2 out of 3 is the bonus to this. So how it turned out, I don't think you could rewrite history and go back and say this was a mistake. I think it actually worked out pretty good for him.
I mean, I think the point is that it wasn't their strategic decision to do this. This wasn't based off of we think this is best to win games right now, or win these series right now. It's based off the pitch count, the innings count. It gave him sort of an out to give him, would it be 10 days off rather than the 1 inning he pitched in the All-Star game? Or no, actually, he's going to be on about almost, 2 weeks off by the time between
16 pitches starts. In between, essentially.
Yeah. But all that is a way to kind of stretch him out to get him to the end of the season, whatever their innings count is. And I could sit here, I could do a whole show about pitch counts and innings counts and arm trouble and what's worthwhile or whatever. But that's the reality of it. That's the way the Pirates are approaching this. That's the way every baseball team approaches it these days. They're trying to preserve the innings. They're not going to go over 140, 150, 160, whatever the inning number is they have. So this is a way to sort of make sure he gets to that finish line, gets to late September, and hopefully for their sake gets to be able to pitch in October.
Not only Skeens, but Keller. They didn't pitch Keller this series either. They're going Keller, Skeens next series. I understand that St. Louis Cardinals series might be bigger in the grand scheme of things for the Pirates. They did win 2 out of 3. But, you know, the fact is I think they might be too cautious with some of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, Keller's definitely surprised. He went 196 innings last year. He almost got to.
He only pitched 3 innings before the break.
He pitched Sunday.
But he only pitched 3 innings before the break.
Yeah,
well, this is an opportunity to give you a guy a rest. I mean, you get 7, 8, 9 days off. You don't get that very often with a starting pitcher. So, like I said, if it would have turned out bad and they would have got whipped 3 games by the Phillies, you could have said, "Oh man, what are you doing?" Shelty,
and really,
you know, but
2 of their starters were
way.
really bad this series. So, I mean, they could have. But they should have lost the first game going by starting pitching. Now, they came back and won the game. Good for them. Give them all credit. But you're right. It would have looked a lot worse if they did lose this series or get swept in this series for sure than they actually win the series.
Plus, you have to think, Buzz, they probably thought that they had a better chance against the Cardinals than the Phillies, right? So let's throw our best
Everyone
guys
thought
against
that.
that.
The Phillies
right?
are one of the best teams.
And they are. And the Phillies,
they almost were conceding those games.
And the Pirates
but they
aren't going to catch the Phillies. The head-to-head games against the Cardinals are a lot more important for their playoff hopes. So there is some logic or rationale behind it. But I'm sure if this was, and we all grew up, you know, when we were kids, they would have had their ace go. They would use the All-Star break as their 4 days rest from McKellar's situation.
Yeah.
And even he was pulled up to 3 innings to start before the break. Now that. He didn't say it was to preserve his arm, but I'm sure that was part of the. That's all. The Pirates mapped this out. They charted out. There's so many people involved. Again, for better or for worse, these are people who are smarter than me and smarter than me in terms of physiology and science or whatever. Rest. They believe it's like load management in the NBA. There's some studies that say they don't, and I'm not going to get into the whole debate. I'm saying that this has nothing to do with winning the Cardinals series, the Phillies series, or using your best play. It's to preserve their arms for late in the season. And if they're pitching well in October, and if they make October, then maybe you could look back and say maybe it was worthwhile to do that.
50 and 49 at the break. Is it smoke and mirrors, or are they a legit contender, Mark?
Well, you have to say they're a legit contender because they're right there.
I mean, they still can't hit.
Now.
No runs today.
But my issue with them, and it's been like this for years now, is once they have that big series where they run off 7 or 8 games in a row, 8 out of 10 or whatever it is, they can't seem to always sustain that. They will go on the flip side of that and lose 7 out of 10. They haven't much did that this year type of situation. If they can get past that situation, which could be good with Skeens and Keller going next series, maybe that's the case. But I need to see more consistency out of them, not dropping, not having that August swoon where they then all of a sudden, right in the mix of things, all of a sudden you see them 6 games back.
It does seem like there's some momentum maybe to add a bat in terms of what Ben Cherington, if you kind of look to what he says, he's kind of harder to read than a lot of the people we even deal with, Mark, in terms of reading their quotes or reading into their quotes or what they mean. But it seems like the Pirates are open to that. It does seem like I do still feel like on whole, there are players that will get like Brian Hayes isn't as bad as he was the first half. Now Brian Reynolds probably can't get any better because he was been excellent. But there's enough players that have upside. O'Neal, like there are guys who probably will get better. If Henry Davis could be here, you imagine how good this offense could be that much better if he was playing like a #1 pick. But I don't want to beat that drum anymore. So I do think that the Pirates have a sustainable path here to stay in the race. I'm not know if they're going to make the playoffs or not, but I think they're a good enough team that they're at least a 500 team, and that keeps you in the race for the last week.
I think it's a bad precedent if they don't go out and if they win these games or within range and they don't make a move, then you're thinking of nutting, saying, okay, we don't need this type of situation. We had the $30 million to spend in the offseason. We didn't do it very thrifty. We didn't do it really good. So it doesn't matter. We're still here. They need to go out and add to this right now within the next week or two. It's going to be tough. I mean, there's probably 6 or 8 teams who are looking for the same people. I mean, the Phillies want Rooker and Mason Miller. So, I mean, everybody wants them. So it's going to be tough to be able to get somebody that's going to come in here.
And it's a logjam right now. I mean, I would venture to say, I know there's 60-some games left, but this series against the Cardinals is the most important series of the year. They got to take 2 out of 3. Then 4 out of 6 coming back is a pretty successful start to the second half, Chris.
Yeah, it's a division rival. It's a team you're fighting for in the thick of the wild card race. Your home games that they haven't been very good relative to, they've been worse at home than on the road. And if they can get kind of hot at home, all those reasons, it's a series you don't want to start losing series now. You're right. After you build up this capital, you got yourself over 500. You've got yourself within a half a game of a playoff spot. You don't start giving that back now by losing series.
Yeah, there's no easy ones coming up in the next month and a half either. You're going Dodgers, Padres, Mariners, Texans, Texas Astros, Cardinals. I mean, these are not gimme games here. So they're going to have to play well to be staying in this race in end of August.
Yeah, but the good news is you're playing the teams that you're competing against, and that's what the Pirates need to do, beat those teams. And what we need to do right now is take a break. Coming back, we're going to talk about what the Pirates need to add if they're going to be buyers. They're not going to be sellers, but how much of a buyer are they going to be? All that and more after the break. All right, welcome back to the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Rich Walsh. The big question now is, will the Pirates be a buyer at the trade deadline? I think they'll buy something, Mark, but I don't know how much of a buyer they will be. There's a ton of teams they have to compete with. I know we talked a little bit about that in the first segment, but they need a bat. They need maybe some middle relief pitching help, potentially a catcher, a center fielder. I mean, they could use a lot of positions here. Do you think they're going to go out and maybe get someone that's going to do some damage in this lineup?
Well, they better. I mean, they need it. I mean, look at the outfield. Every single week, every single game, the outfield's different. I mean, they need some bats in that outfield to be able to make a run at this. I mean, it's going to be difficult to be able to find anybody, I think, to make a trade. I mean, who are you moving? You're moving some of your key pieces in the minor leagues. If it's Johnson, if it's Chandler, I doubt if they're going to do that.
Do it, though. They have a window that's only, 4 or 5 years. You got to do it now, right?
I understand, but you even got guys like Chapman, which I think if anybody would take Chapman, because you can move Holderman into that spot right there. But they have to add something. This roster, although they've been playing well, 500 we know, it's not a playoff roster right now. They need something else. They need something else to add to it. And I just don't know if they're going to go out and get it or somebody that's going to make a difference.
I mean, they have a surplus of pitching in the pitching prospects. They don't have hardly any, other than Johnson, really hardly any high-level hitting prospect that you can depend on, really, that they believe at this point. So you take from that surplus maybe and you get that back to add to. You think, like you talked about this window, you're referring to pretty much the Skeens, Jones, and Keller top 3 starters window, and whoever comes in to backfill that. You can take some of your excess starting pitching. Maybe another team likes one of your guys, Solometo, whoever. Throw out the Ashcroft, somebody like that another team wants. That's where you would find a trade partner. And if you get somebody, the guys that are out there, the Rookers, a lot of these trade candidates, they're not rentals. They're not true rentals. They would be for part of your three-year window you're talking about. They wouldn't just be for this year. So if you could almost. it's still not a baseball trade 'cause you're trading prospect for a player with a team that's out of the race, but it's not a three-month thing here. They're doing 2-month thing. They're doing just to push for the playoffs this year. They need another position player. I don't know if there's a lot of question marks, and if you're trying to be a contender at this point, Jack Sawinski, you can't just say he's our starting left fielder or whatever.
That's what worries me more than anything, that they're going to think Jack Sawinski's going to break out a batting 170 something. That's what scares me. You got to go out and do something. You got to replace that guy.
Did that, and they gave him every opportunity.
I know.
So that's what I'm telling you, their mindset.
I know that's their mindset. Go and get Robert. Get rid of some of these prospects. You might never see these guys. Get Robert, get Ward, get Rooker. Get one of these guys that can be in the lineup for the next 3 years.
And like I said, the most important part is they would be put, yes, 3 years, exactly. It's not as if this is a rental you're going for this year. It's both a play. So you're almost using those prospects to build for this.
Throw in Henry Davis, too. It doesn't seem like he's going to be a good fit here.
I think Rooker would fit perfectly, an outfielder, DH type of guy that's under control through, 2028. But he's going to make decent amount of money arbitration-wise, I think.
Ward's not making a lot. He's making under $5 million. Ward from the Angels.
But if you be able to solidify him with Reynolds in that outfield for the long term 3 or 4 years, of course. But you're going to have to give up more than just a prospect, I think. I mean, if Key Brian Hayes goes and Rooker
I'm saying like 3 or 4 prospects. That's a Pirates deal. Give them 3 guys that might never make it up.
You figure if it's the A's, it's going to be prospects, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to pay anybody.
Saying that, just kind of like the Pirates, Get 4 guys for 1. That's what they got for Garrett Cole.
It's a matter of how much you value, how much they value these prospects 3 or 4 years from now, how much you make this year window, you kind of swap that out. How much can the payroll go up? I mean, that's the
It can go up a lot. It's in the bottom of the major leagues.
And if they have that way to go, because you're right, if you trade for Rooker this year, he actually has nothing to the payroll. He's making essentially the minimum. Then he goes to arbitration next year. Does that almost subtract the player next year from the Pirates because of the roster? So it's in the league, it's not capped. It's not a salary cap, right? This is all a self-imposed salary cap.
Well, that's something they need to change. We can't do anything about it for a while, but all right, we can do something about taking a break, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to be talking about the Steelers. It's training camp week. Stay right there. All right, welcome back to the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Rich Walsh, and I'm here with 2 Steelers beat guys. We'll all be up at St. Vincent in Latrobe on Wednesday when the players report. Thursday's the first practice, 10:30 practices now. But I think all eyes, no question, are going to be on the quarterback position again. And we're going to have the same kind of storylines. First you had Mitch Mason competing, Kenny Pickett. Now it's going to be Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Now, Russell Wilson has pole position, guys. Will they give Fields a legit shot to see if he could potentially beat him out?
No.
No? Yeah, I didn't think so either. But
no, I mean that's not.
It's kind of like the Mitch Trubisky. I mean, he's the guy.
They talked a good game with Pickett when Trubisky come in, but you knew darn well that it was going to be Trubisky from the start. I mean, I'm not saying that this is not an important camp for Justin Fields, because I think it is. I mean, he got about 4 weeks, 5 weeks to show this front office, this coaching staff, that he can be a quarterback that can take them to 20, 25, 26, 27, where you could possibly extend him at the end of this year, beginning of the season. So it's a very important camp for Fields, but I don't think he has a shot in heck.
Yeah, that's the template, too. I think that's sort of the scenario, and maybe I'm basing it off that, where the Steelers started, 1-3 that year, and we're struggling offensively. In the middle of a game, we're struggling, and that's what caused the quarterback switch. But that was in the regular season. It's hard to, outside of injury, of course, any scenario where Fields will be ahead of, where they'll even allow it to happen. Remember, again, this happened 2 summers. I would keep saying it. People ask me, 2 summers ago, you were all there. Every single snap from start of OTAs all the way through camp, every preseason game, every practice, Mitch Trubisky was the QB1. There was never any competition the whole time, so there's no reason to believe that. We saw all this camp too, all this summer too, right? There was never any, like Justin Fields was swapping in with the first team.
So you're telling us that they're showing us what's happening, but a lot of us aren't believing it.
All right, Chris, do they have to sign? Do they have to sign either one of these guys to a long-term kind of deal before the season starts? Do you need some kind of stability for the future?
Well,
at that position?
I mean, they've pretty much hedged their bets by bringing both of them in, and if one of them doesn't, if Wilson doesn't work out, then you have Fields, and then you give Fields.
But they're both on 1-year deals.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what I'm saying. You don't.
I think, but they have him now at no cost, essentially, in terms of salary cap, a very little salary cap hit on Fields' case. and they got him for acquisition cost was really low, only for Fields. Play out the year. There's so many avenues now with the franchise if things get ugly in terms of signing him. But I don't think one of those two would have to just completely tear it up to be able to say, oh, I'm leaving, I'm not taking your offer. The Steelers wouldn't keep him. If they perform well enough, the Steelers will pay him over the offseason. If for whatever reason Russell Wilson returns to 2018 Russell Wilson, or Justin Fields becomes the star that people thought he might be as 11th overall pick, if that scenario plays out, the Steelers will pay, and pay a lot, I'm sure. And that's fine. It's a starting quarterback rate in the NFL. They'll pay him in March. I don't think you don't have to worry about that right now. You don't do that now. Yeah. If it doesn't work, then you find somebody else next year.
I wouldn't touch Russell Wilson right now. Let him just play it out. If he has a good season, we'll go talk to you next year. And, you know, he's going to be 36 at that point. Yeah. And 36-year-old quarterbacks really don't, I mean, they're one-year deal type of guys, and there's no such thing as bad one-year deals, right? Fields is still the wild card to me. I mean, you could do the Jordan Love type of situation, but do you feel comfortable enough to give him a year and $12 million with Jordan Love to get him to next year under your control? I don't know if it's, or does he want to do that? Does Justin Fields want to do that? Does he see something else somewhere else saying, hey, I'd much rather go here because I got a better shot here. I'll bite the bullet this year. It's just so many unknowns right now.
The trickiest situation would be Russell Wilson is good enough all year that he doesn't lose the job, and the Steelers are good enough they're in the race, and they finish 9-8 or 10-7 or 8-9 or whatever. And then you're like, Russell, he's 36. You get to March now. He wasn't that great last year. We want him to go somewhere else. You haven't seen Fields play now. Do you give Fields money? You saw him in practice. Do you trust him as your guy? Where do you go from there? That's kind of, if I'm the Steelers, I'd rather see definitively, this is the guy, or they're both not the guy, and which is start from scratch again.
You know, the more and more I think about it, I think they'll probably just wait till March next year and say,
you're probably right.
Hey, who wants to come back? It's at the lowest amount of money, who wants to come back?
All right, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about other positions. I want to touch on the offensive line, and what are they going to do at wide receiver? All that and more next. All right, welcome back to the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. Guys, what do the Steelers do at the wide receiver position? Do you think Omar Khan will even entertain a trade for Brandon Ayuk? Will they try to get someone that's cut later, or are they just going to stand pat with what they have?
I think that Ayuk thing might have sailed, right? That ship has sailed. It doesn't look like the 49ers want to move it all off of him.
Plus, you got to give up to something to get this guy, and you're going to have to pay him $30 million a year.
The only thing I could see with that is if he becomes a problem in camp, doesn't show up, says I'm not going to show up, and they get fed up with him and send him out. But he hasn't really shown a lot of that. A couple of social media things, but those are minimal right there. So it almost seems like that's out of the question right now. I mean, like I keep saying, if they wait till the cuts on August 29th to bring somebody in, that person's not going to be any good. I mean, he's going to be average, right? He's not going to be better than what you have. They're going to hope that one of these guys develops and steps forward over these next 3 or 4 weeks, and that's their. And if something else arises, they want to. If somebody else comes available, then you jump on it right there. But I have a feeling the guys you have in that room right now is the guys you're starting with.
Yeah, it's really hard at this point to think that something's going to come available. Ayuk and Devontae Adams, I guess the situation could deteriorate where their team would trade them. I guess. But
you have to give up something. That's the problem.
They have to give up. That's been the problem the whole time. The Steelers had to pay 2 ways to get this theoretical wide receiver one, both money-wise and compensation-wise, in a trade for these guys.
I mean, not to cut you off, but I'm cutting you off here. No. You have to think that they were interested because Florio came out and said there was 5 teams, right?
Yeah.
Ready to make the trade. Steelers created money right around that time at the draft by messing with Highsmith's contract. So you would imagine they were in on that right there. So even though they're telling you we're happy with what they have, they were probably pretty interested in Ayuk at that time.
Do you ever remember a year when they've had this much space when camp started below the cap? Like it is like they have planned to slot a star player. It could be whatever, a receiver, and they need a receiver. It's just that at this point, I don't know. Like the 49ers have been on record. Obviously, you could blow them out of the water with a trade offer. I don't think the Steelers want to do that, or else it would have been done in March because I'm sure they could have done it back then. You're right. If this camp plays out and what Roman Wilson and these other guys don't stand up, they're really in a tough spot in terms of what they're going to do.
Chris, we're all in the locker room. What do you think the dynamic would be if they brought in one of those guys with the George Pickens? He's going to get paid next year, too. Yeah. He won't be the #1 guy. You bring in another guy that's the #1. I mean, what's that going to be?
Because George knows next year is when he's going to get paid.
Yeah.
Would he get paid by the Steelers? And that's where it could really get ugly. I think is if he. Ayuk this year, expiring contract next year for Pickens, where he's going to make essentially a real low salary for being a star if he has a good season this year. But if somebody comes in theory, that takes away his touches, his targets, his number 1 status. It's something to think of.
The key is he'll get upset if the ball doesn't come his way. Wow. He doesn't care about anything else. The ball comes his way. Yeah. He gets catches, touchdowns, yards. Then he can go cash out either here or somewhere else in a year or so. That's where it's all intertwined. He don't care if Brandon Ayuk comes in and does whatever. He just if it affects him, it affects his pocketbook, if it affects his production.
Real quick, before we go to break here, 30 seconds we have. Troy Fautano, is he going to be in the starting rotation on the offensive line? What do you guys think?
Not when we get out there, I don't think. Maybe by the end, maybe by sort of end of preseason. I think they're going to play the little slow game on this one. I'm not saying not week 1, but I don't think they're throwing him in there right away.
Yeah, not this week, not the preseason. Less than 20% by week 1 of the regular season.
All right, number 1, Cochran's Red, White, and New celebration has been such a big hit. They've extended it through July 31st. Visit any number 1 Cochran location and look for special tags marking select new vehicles. Each tag indicates extra savings of up to $1,000 off their already reduced prices. These offers are only available in stores, so hurry in now for the Red, White, and New celebration, or check out their inventory at Cochran.com. Well, that's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Mark Kaboly and Chris Adamski. We'll all see you from camp starting Wednesday.